Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and we're going to work on a Mitchell reel. It's a classic. It was made in 1979. It's the Mitchell 204, which I did a short video on, and some folks asked, well, how is it made? And is it similar to the Mitchell 300 or the 308, or just what is it? Well, it's kind of a hybrid reel. It's kind of interesting. It shares 204. You would think 304 would be somewhat in the same family, and to some extent it is. But the 304 was one of the first reels that Mitchell made. This one a much later version. It kind of seems like a mini 300, but the gearing and everything else inside is different. So I thought I would take it apart and show it to you. I also got comments that it looked a lot like a bigger reel, the Mitchell 324, and it does. The 324 kind of shares the same bullet casing, and a lot of the design inside is similar. This is a bigger reel now. This one would be on par with the 300 in terms of capacities and that, but this one is much simpler engineering inside than you would find on a 300. So let's get started. We'll show you this reel. It's a nice one. It's a nice little pond reel. And it's a freshwater reel. It's not a saltwater reel. We're going to take this apart, and we're going to do that by taking off the exterior pieces. While I do that, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel. And if you do subscribe to my channel, please hit the notification button. That way you'll see what videos I'm posting. If you like the art of reel repair, if you like to see how reels come apart and get serviced and put back together again, well, this is a great channel for you. And you'll also learn a little bit about reel design, what makes some reels similar, what makes them different. We started by taking off the star adjuster, or the adjuster button, and you just simply pull up on this spool. Now you'll notice on the 304 that has a rapid disconnect spool. That's not the case with the 224. And you can see just by the condition of the inside of this reel is lightly used. The Teflon washer hasn't even yellowed. Nice bright shiny metal work inside here. Spring is nice and clean. If you were servicing the bail and you popped out this little trigger mechanism back here, sometimes folks get confused about how that spring goes. So we'll just show you for a moment. The spring is actually inside a notch in the spool here, wraps around a stud on the outside, and comes back to catch a little piece of hook here on that spool release. Well, we're going to take that axle shaft out. You'll get a better view of that in just a moment. So I like to take all my pieces and parts and put them into a parts tray. That way I don't lose them. There's not a lot of pieces and parts that are going to come off of this reel, but keeping them in a central place is always a good practice, and I would encourage you to do that. We're going to take the handle off first. I'm going to do that by rotating that in a clockwise manner. And then there's only a single screw that holds this side on. Interestingly enough, the side plate reads Garcia, not Garcia Mitchell, even though the body reads Garcia Mitchell 204 on this side. Kind of an omen of things to come. Garcia was the distributor for the Mitchell reels in the U.S., and that's where you saw the Garcia tag. Garcia was not a manufacturer. Now, when Mitchell went bankrupt, Garcia tried to make them for a year or two, I believe. But we can see underneath here that this looks like the reel has never been used. Very clean inside, and that grease almost looks like it may be the original grease. So we're going to just take a paper towel and mop that off. Because what you want to do when you service a reel, you want to clean the reel of debris. You want to inspect all the pieces and parts. And then you want to re-lube and reassemble. This stuff kind of has a taffy kind of a consistency to it. I guess from being there and drying out and the like. And I use a variety of things to get it clean. I'm using a little penetrating oil, see if I can't break up some of that gooiness of that stuff that's sticking to everything, the glue. Alright, well, it's better. Then I use a paper towel to kind of wipe it down. Alright, that's the case is off. There's a a screw in this case. If it comes out, sometimes it comes out. Don't worry about it. Very simple design. Now you saw that button on the top here, and that button normally indicates a high-speed version of the reel. And in this case, you can see how big the main gear is, and the size of that main gear kind of speaks to the speed. We're going to pull the pin out. It just came out when I was mopping up the grease. There's a pin that goes in the crosswind block. This is a good place to take a picture. Notice that the crosswind block is not symmetrical, so it does have to go in one way and one way only when you go to reinstall, and that is with the shoulders pointing up and the pin for the axle shaft up. If you put it in the downside, it's going to bump against this block and it's not going to complete the revolution. All right, I'm going to just pull up on the axle shaft. That's simple enough to do. Going to wipe that axle shaft down. It's got some old grease on it as well. And you can see that there are very limited parts in this reel, so there's no excuse not to go in there and try and service your reel on a regular basis. And a regular basis to me is about a year, unless you're really fishing heavy or unless something has happened to the reel that would trigger you to say it needs service. Maybe it got dunked in the water, dropped in the sand, whatever. This is the crosswind block. Remember, this is the top. And inside you're going to find the slot for that. And that slot is going to ride on the stud on the main gear here. So you can't pull the main gear without removing the rotor next. I actually think this is two pieces. I'm going to have to draw my memory with this one. I'm looking for my little Mitchell tool. It should be a 12mm nut. I use a deep socket because you can't get a flat wrench in there. It won't work, right? So use a socket. This one is a Mitchell tool. You don't need the Mitchell tool. You just need a deep socket to remove this. And once you remove that, the rotor is going to come off next. Then you're going to notice there's a couple of little shim washers underneath. And then the pinion gear is actually going to push through. Just like that. Notice on your pinion gear now, just trying to see if we have that rotor there. We don't. Okay, so that's how you get the pinion gear out, and now you can push the main gear out. I probably should have said this before. You want to disconnect the anti-reverse dog, which is behind the main gear. And you'll see that there's a series of slots here. That anti-reverse dog's beak, right here in the case, is what's going to intersect with these ridges to stop your reel when you're cranking it and you need to hook in the fish or what have you. All right, just a quick clean in the case because, well, there's just nothing in that case. And then from a maintenance standpoint, you do not need to remove that dog if it's running fine, and this one appears to be a new reel, so nothing needed there. Again, you can see that there's hardly any grease. Whatever grease it was spilled out, so the reel must have been stored down this way. In other words, put on this face when it was stored. And that's probably why all the grease wound up on the other side case rather than inside. I'm going to grab a kitchen scrubby now. Just a corner of one. I'm going to use some rod and reel cleaner. And I'm going to just use that to clean off all the dust and dirt. So we've often said a lot of times if fishing reels could talk, I wonder what this one's story would be. It's been stored. It's not in the original box. It doesn't have its paperwork, but it doesn't appear to be used. So kind of makes you wonder. And right now, all I'm seeing is a heavy coat of dust on this reel. Okay, so that's all kind of cleaned up. We can take another towel and wipe some of the excess off. The rod and reel cleaner I'm using is a Penn rod and reel cleaner. It's kind of the Cert Scum of the lot. It's 2-in-1. It's a cleaner and a polisher. All right, so now we have a main gear. You want to inspect that. Just the slightest bit of little grease there. Get that out of the way. All those teeth are nice and clean. This is an aluminum gear. I'm going to go ahead and grab some grease. Refresh that. I'm using Penn Precision Real grease on this. You want to get it on the teeth. You want to get it where that crosswind block is going to travel. And you want to get it on the back, the shaft that's going to go through the case. You do not need to get it onto the ratchet that acts as the anti-reverse. Let's go ahead and turn that and push that in. Push that all the way down. Next up then is the pinion gear. Do the same thing here. You would inspect the teeth normally, make sure all these teeth are nice and in the same construction. It doesn't have any bends or breaks or tears or anything. Get a good amount of grease on there. Get it on the shaft, which is going to ride through the bushing in the case. And then take your gear and just bring it up like that. We had two washers. We had a shim washer and a thicker washer went underneath the rotor. Then we have a rotor with a catch. And here's that anti-reverse, not the anti-reverse, the trip spring again, if you needed to see that. There's a tag that comes underneath through that hole. You see that shiny little piece of steel there. Wraps around the post and then hooks in under the latch here. And just go ahead and find the flat side on the pinion gear. This one's shaped like the letter D. It only has one flat side. Find the flat side in that key. Line those up. If you push it out, don't worry. And now you just need to rotate your case until that slips into the inset there. Well, this is an older reel and needs its service, but if you're working on a current reel or maybe you're working on an older one and you're stuck, you have a problem or a question, if you leave that question in the comments section, I will try to answer that question for you. And it can be anything. I'm not going to tell you I know everything, but it can be anything, and I'll try and help you with the answer to your question. A lot of times I'll get the question, I pick the reel apart and something's sticking on the way back in. I don't have a part, where do I find the part? And I'll try to help you. So just leave it in the comments section. All right, I'm just polishing up the shaft. I'm going to apply a light coat of grease to the shaft now. And it's interesting, when you do these reels, every now and then you find a surprise, and I think the surprise with this one is that it doesn't look like it's ever been fished. So the reel is 40 plus years old, and other than collecting a lot of dust, it doesn't appear to have been used at all. No wear and tear on the reel. All right, we want to reinstall that crosswind block. Remember what we said, the shoulders are facing up. Hold that crosswind block now and find the hole in the axle shaft and bring that down. And then you want to align the hole in the axle shaft with the hole in the crosswind block. Go to your parts tray, find the pin, and then put the pin in to hold the axle shaft. It's a good time to turn it around now and put your handle back on. Before I do that, I've been cleaning everything else. There's a little bit of dust and the like here. So if you've got the 320 or the 324, the insides are almost identical, and the service process is almost identical as well. The difference being the gear and the case size, and as we said, the rotor is bigger, there's more spool capacity, those kinds of things. But internally, you're going to see a similar setup. All right, I'm going to put that anti-reverse back on, and we're going to just show you how that operates as a fishing reel. You turn your main gear. It's doing two things. It's turning the pinion gear and the rotor cup, and it's moving that stud on it is moving the oscillation to cause your axle shaft to go up and down. And that's because that stud on the main gear is offset. It's not in the center of the reel. All right, there's not much more to do on this. We're going to grab that outside case, Normally I would tell you to service the drag washers, but there's only one. You see it sitting on the axle shaft there. There's a small one in the top end, but this one was not built for a lot of drag. That's why basically it's a pond wheel. All right, make that pretty. There's a tag on this. You want to find the slot where that tag is going to go in first. And you can put the bottom of the case on. And you can tighten that screw down. This reel did have line on it. Now I removed that before I serviced it. It was very old line. It was pretty brittle. So I can't say it was new old stock laying in a box somewhere. It wasn't. Somebody took the time to put the line on it. But again, you look at the cleanliness of the metal parts of that after all of that time. It just kind of tells you, well, somebody probably had good intention, but it never did go fishing. You would find evidence of that in things like the spool here. That's a nice thing that I've never seen before. Do not clean with chlorinated solvents. Warning, do not clean with well, you heard me the first time. Chlorinated solvents. I wonder what that would do. I guess plastic. I guess it would probably somehow injure the plastic there. One more piece to clean here. It's the button, and then we'll show you one more time how it works. So if you haven't subscribed by now, please take the subscription and hit the notification button, and it'll help you to learn more about fishing reels. It'll help me as a channel. And if you have a particular reel you're interested in, I have a deep library now, a couple of hundred videos. And if I don't have a video and you're looking for how to fix your reel, well, if you leave me a request in that comment section, well, I'll see if I can find one in my shop, or I'll make a note on my pad when one comes in. I'll be happy to do that for you. All right, so we just oiled the junction. Now, this is just a dead end here. This wing just fits in a hole here. There is a spring very much like the Mitchell 300 spring that goes on this side. It anchors in one side of the case. The other pin comes through here, and the bail is set accordingly. Well, let's give it a run. Bail trips nicely. Tighten up that handle. Give it a ride. That's a beautiful operating reel. 40 years later, hardly fished, and now you know what the Mitchell 204 is. You know some of its relatives. You've seen it taken apart, so you know how it's made, and you know how to service it. So I hope you've enjoyed that. If you did, please like it. If you want to see more, again, please subscribe. To all of our first responders and essential personnel, thank you for everything that it is that you do to keep us safe. It really is appreciated. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, wishing everybody a great day. Please stay safe, stay well, and stay watching.